Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, we are going to be taking a good long look at Sylveon GX, but not as a card, how we would use it as a deck. And the deck really does revolve around Sylveon GX. There aren't really any partner Pokemon per se. It is a Sylveon GX deck. Now, in terms of the typing, I suppose you hit weakness on dragons like Giratina, but it's not particularly great. Your weakness is actually very good because there aren't many good metal Pokemon around at the moment. No one's playing Mega Scizor, but then again, you never know what's going to be released in the future. This might not be true forever. Resistance to Dark is quite good because Resistance is always good, but Speed Darkrai is one of the big decks at the moment. I hate the retreat cost here though, because for reasons we're going to see in a minute, Sylveon really wants to stay alive for as long as possible. A retreat cost of 3 means you could use Heavy Boots, have some more HP, and stop Confusion, which is something which will be really good in this deck, but you can't because the retreat cost is only 2. And 200 HP is standard. Of course we'd like it higher. We would always want it higher. Wow, almost always want it higher. Really here though, we are focusing on the first attack, and it is an absolute doozy. Magical Ribbon, search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them into your hand. You just search for any 3 cards and put them straight into your hand, and that is a brilliant attack. You can basically guarantee you've got what you want to use next turn. And there are more good things about this attack. Firstly, it's used for a single energy. 1 energy and off you go, but even better than that, we've got the Energy Evolution Eevee. So not only is it a single energy attack, but you can use it on turn 1, you have an Eevee, you attach a Fairy Energy to Eevee, the ability allows you to search for a Sylveon and evolve straight away, and then on your very first turn of the game, assuming you're not going first of course, in which case you can't attack, you can just straight away start searching for whatever you want. It's great. Now your opponent can play a card like an end to shuffle your hand into your deck, and that is going to happen a few times, just like it always happened when you used Aero Blitz. Here's the thing though, you couldn't use Aero Blitz forever, and you can pretty much use this forever. And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, at the absolute least, you're getting a free hand refresh every single turn. And the deal here is very simple. We are searching our deck for disruption cards and stopping our opponent playing the game. Now this is nothing we've never done before. Too many negatives, but I'll allow it. Sableye. We've all seen this deck before, or at least a number of us have. And this is how people are playing Lapras at the moment. Sit there healing with Rough Seas while you stop your opponent playing the game. Here's the better thing with Sylveon. You are going to be able to have the cards you need, rather than hoping you draw into them. So I've said it's a disruption deck where you're trying to stop your opponent playing the game. So let's run through the disruption cards. And as always, there is a comment section. If I've missed one, go nuts. Team Flare Grunt. Discarding an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Sounds good to me. You can just get rid of any energy you like. Slow them down. Do good. You can also use Team Skull Grunt. Now this is really good because you look at your opponent's hand and then you discard 2 energy from it. If the energy is attached to their active, you use Team Flare Grunt. If the energy is not attached to their active, then you've got the beauty here of being able to use Team Skull Grunt. This is not something you always want to use, but I'll give you one example. Your opponent uses Hollow Hunt GX on a Decidueye to search for a bunch of energy. Well, now you know they've got it in hand, so you can use Team Skull Grunt. But it is a card that you will whiff on sometimes. Crushing Hammer or Enhanced Hammer to discard their energy. Crushing Hammer on a heads, discard any energy. Enhanced Hammer, you don't have to hit a heads, but it can only be special energy. And between Flare Grunt, Skull Grunt, Crushing Hammer and Enhanced Hammer, the goal here is to make sure your opponent never has any energy. We've got the supporter card Delinquent. Delinquent means that you discard a stadium in play. Now you'll notice I'm not really talking that heavily about stadiums. This is not a stadium dependent deck, so discarding stadiums is generally going to hurt them more than you. Oh yeah, and they have to discard 3 cards from their hand. Now if you can catch them with a hand with 3 or fewer cards in, then they're in top deck mode, and then you're doing what you really want to be doing, because now they're not playing the game. And as mean as it sounds, the goal here is to make sure your opponent doesn't get to play the game. Speaking of annoying supporters, we've got Team Rocket's handiwork. Flip 2 coins for each head, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Now this isn't going to be key to your strategy. I suppose it could be, but the deck lists I've been seeing have been playing kind of 1 or 2 of these. Team Flare Grunt, you need to get rid of the energy when they've got it. This is flippy and it won't always work, but it could just push your opponent over the edge in terms of having nothing to do. Max Potion doesn't initially sound like a disruption card, but your goal here is to stop your opponent doing anything. So you use Crushing Hammer and Enhanced Hammer to get rid of their energy, while playing a Max Potion to completely heal. Sounds nice to me. How about Lysander, while we're talking about disruption cards that might not seem like disruption cards? Pull your opponent's Pokemon off of the bench into the active, and then they're stranded there and they've got nothing to do while I assume you're laughing maniacally. Field Blower's a new card coming out in Guardians Rising. It allows you to discard 2 and any combination of stadiums and tools. Now you could discard them from yourself, but generally you're discarding them from your opponent. No more Fighting Fury belts, no more float stones, and of course a Lysander plus a Field Blower, to get rid of the float stone, could strand something like a Hooper EX in the active while you continue to chuckle. Parallel City could be a fun card to play here. Either you reduce the amount of damage they're doing, you stay alive longer, give you more turns to do some disrupting, or you limit their bench, which limits the things they're able to do, especially if you can catch your opponent when they haven't got attackers down, they've just got a bench full of stuff like Shaman and Tapu Lele. You can really take advantage here and stop them being able to bench attackers. And the final one I'm going to give you for the moment, Red Card, or if you want it in supporter form, Judge. Just lower your opponent's hand size. The fewer cards they've got, the more likely it is that they haven't got the cards they want to do what they want to do. And while we're executing this strategy, there are 2 other cards that are really important to mention. Versus Seeker. We're playing a whole bunch of disruptive supporters. As long as they're in our discard, Versus Seeker means that we can choose between them. They've got too much energy on the active, grab a Team Flare Grunt. They've just gotten 2 energy in their hand, play a Team Skull Grunt. They are sitting there with a hand of 3 cards or fewer, you go and grab that Delinquent. But if you want to reuse anything other than a supporter, you can use Puzzle of Time. You play 2 of these at the same time, grab any 2 cards from your discard pile. And remember, every turn here, you're just searching for 3 cards out of your deck. So having 2 Puzzle of Time in hand at once is not the lottery it is with most decks. Unless you get End, you are going to have it when you need it. And this is the general theory of the deck. You sit there searching your deck every turn, making sure you've got the perfect cards you need to slow down or stop your opponent playing the game. But sooner or later you're going to need to take some prizes. Now maybe that's not actually true. Maybe you just deck your opponent out, just stop them playing until they run out of cards and lose. But really here, the better goal as far as I'm concerned is to run them out of resources and then just take some easy KOs to win the game. Because remember, one way of disrupting your opponent is to knock out the things they want to attack with. So we use Sylveon GX's standard attack here. It's nothing special. We play a Fairy Energy and a double colourless, and as a side note in this deck, you do want to be playing a mixture of Fairy and double colourless energy here. The standard split in most decks is 7 basic, 4 double colourless, but I'll leave you and your testing to decide which is better. and you just sit there hitting for 110. 110 will get a 2-hit KO on pretty much everything. It'll get a 1-hit KO on Shaymin EX for 2 prizes. You can combine it with Choice Band to do 140. It's not the best attack ever, but this is not an offensive powerhouse deck. Slow them down and then take easy prizes. And don't sleep on the GX attack here of Sylveon. You get to choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and you get to put them and all the cards attached to them into your opponent's hand. And yes, I know they can play them down next turn, but they can't immediately evolve them. They can't attach more than 1 energy per turn, especially if you combine this with a Lysander, bring something rubbish into the active, and then get your opponent to pick up their bench. This could be incredibly disruptive, and if you haven't figured this out by now, this is a disruption deck. And this GX attack is beautiful. Now, there are a few other Pokemon you want to consider. You could play the Evolutions from Ancient Origins, Jolteon, Vaporeon, and Flareon. They make Sylveon into their type. So Jolteon means you get a 1-hit KO on stuff like Rayquaza, because you're now hitting 220. Vaporeon gives you a 1-hit KO in the same manner on Volcanion. And Flareon helps against things like Lurantis, but will not get a 1-hit KO on Decidueye unless you play a Choice Band. The other Pokemon I'm quite a big fan of in this deck, and I'm not seeing it in every list, but it's one that I would very much consider. Gumshoos GX. Because, of course, when you're disrupting, information is key. You want to play a Team Skull Grunt, but you don't want to play it if your opponent has no energy. So use Gumshoos GX's ability, raid the premises, to have a look. See what they've got. And don't forget, for a single energy, 10 damage plus 50 for each energy attached to your opponent's active. If they're not 1-hit KOing you, you're using Max Potion to heal. A lot of decks are going to want to get a 1-hit KO, and they're going to do that by piling on energy. Gumshoos stops them doing it. I'm a big fan of Gumshoos in this deck. Now, the other big card you really need here, the big Pokemon, is Tapu Lele. The attack is alright, but it's the ability here. It allows you to search for a supporter card, so you can get the right supporter straight from your deck using Tapu Lele. Now, I know you can do that with Sylveon, but you've got to wait a turn. Tapu Lele gets it now. And just to give one more Pokemon that I think deserves consideration in this deck, Wobbuffet. Pop him in the active, your opponent has no abilities. So against something like Vileplume Decidueye, which might be the very best deck pre-Guardians Rising, you just stick a Wobbuffet in the active, they're doing very little, and you can still do your disruption plan. You're not searching with Sylveon, but you are stopping them using their abilities, which is even better. And against a Vileplume deck, you might need Wobbuffet. Now, this all sounds very good at the moment. There are a couple of big weaknesses, and I can run through them very quickly. Any metal decks that get big will give this deck fits, but that's unlikely at the moment. There's just none that seem to be that great. But anything that can 1-hit KO Sylveon is a problem. Now, there's different ends here, because Rayquaza is at one end of the spectrum. He can get a 1-hit KO, but he needs his Spirit Link, his Double Colorless, his Mega Turbo, and all of that. Free energy, Skyfield, full bench. Not easy. Actually, 7 Pokemon on the bench if we want to be pedantic. You can probably, as the Sylveon player, through a combination of Energy Denial, Parallel City, etc., maybe even Field Blower for the Spirit Link, stop them setting up and winning. But that's not the case with everyone. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of decks which I think will hurt Sylveon. By far the biggest one here is Garbodor. He attacks for 1 energy, so the energy denial doesn't work. Maybe Team Skullgrunt works a bit, but standard energy denial doesn't work. You attach an energy and then immediately attack. And Sylveon is a deck that really likes using item cards. It's likely to be weak to Garbodor. This deck has not been huge in Japan since it's been legal, and I think the biggest reason for that is Garbodor. But the other one here I quite like is Vespiquen. It again attaches for a single energy, albeit a double colorless, and if you hammer enough Pokemon in your discard pile, then you can just get a 1-hit KO on Sylveon. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Garbodor against Sylveon, but if it's the same kind of profile, might have some success. Now, I think that's about enough on Sylveon for one day, but there is a comment section, so go nuts, but remember the rule. Be nice. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, like to this video, and the most important thing as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.